This is your team? Cool. I like the vibe. I'm Bennett, leader of Benny's adventure team. Any chance we could team up, please?
This is Bennett. First things first, I do want to say I feel like complete and utter slime secretion today. I don't know why. I woke up and I feel like crap. But we must soldier on, so we are going to continue here. Now, in the latest poll, I actually called out and I said that Bennett was going to be the new meme because I knew everybody wanted to see Bennett. There were a lot of people talking about Bennett, and I included him on the poll last time and he just got completely bombarded with Ningguang votes. I said, is Bennett going to be the next meme? And you guys responded with 50% of 41,000 votes. No, Bennett's not the next meme, but I think we all kind of know who is, right? So Bennett is actually a big deal because Bennett is highly regarded as one of the best supporting characters in the game. I had a couple of people comment that said if I do a Bennett video to try and show some love to a DPS build, and I will try my best. Please be aware before you go any deeper into this video, I literally got Bennett off of the Albedo banner. So I haven't used them since the beginning of the game like some people have, but I have kind of known about them at least for some time. I just never had any hands-on experience. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into some things here. So our normal attack here is called Strike of Fortune. 5 consecutive rapid strikes on the normal attack. Charge attack is going to do 2 rapid sword strikes, just like most other sword characters. And the plunging attack is just, you know, from the air, do AoE damage when you hit the ground. Now, this is at level 6, thanks to Child's talent helping me save some resources here. This is at level 6, so you can kind of see how this breaks down. Pretty standard stuff, nothing too crazy. Next, we have Passion Overload. So Bennett pulls all of his fire and passion from adventuring into his sword. Results may vary based on how fired up he is. So this is kind of an interesting talent because it has a couple of different effects that you can do. If you just press it, you're going to do a quick, swift flame strike that deals pyro damage. If you hold it, though, there are a couple of different levels depending on how long you hold it and what it does. So at level 1, basically, when you hold it, you're going to see like this little animation that signifies, hey, I've hit this level. Strikes twice, dealing pyro damage and launching opponents. At level 2, though, when he fully charges it, and it'll release it on its own once you hit this level, unleashes 3 consecutive attacks that deal impressive pyro damage, but the last attack triggers an explosion that launches both Bennett and the enemy, and Bennett does not take any damage from being launched. So very, very interesting, very, very cool. In my short time using Bennett, I don't use the charge very often, but I mean it's there and you can use it if you like it. But there you can kind of see how all of that breaks down: the press damage, the charge with the 2 strikes, the charge with the 2 strikes at the level 2, plus the explosion damage that also happens on there. And you can see we do have 3 separate cooldown values depending on if you press it, hold it for level 1, or hold it for level 2. Next, we have Fantastic Voyage. So Bennett performs a jumping attack that deals pyro damage and creates an inspiration field. So inside of this inspiration field, if the health of the character within the AoE is equal to or falls below 70%, their health will be continuously regenerated, and the amount of HP restored scales off of Bennett's max HP. Okay, so that's a pretty important thing. If you are building Bennett to do better heals, throw some HP on him, give him some HP percent artifacts and HP percent weapon, however you see fit. You know, if that's all you're going for, just max out his HP. Probably not the best idea, but it is there. If the health of the character within the AoE is higher than 70%, they actually gain an attack bonus that is based off of Bennett's base attack. So base is the most important word here. So this actually scales not based off of your just raw attack, right? So your base attack is this 522. Base attack is your character's attack value plus your weapon attack value. So don't go thinking, oh, well, I'm going to get, you know, some crazy number based off this 976 right here. No, 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 no. That's not how that works. It's only based off of your base attack value. So just remember, whenever you're trying to build Bennett, if you are trying to maximize this specific attack increase, the best things that you can do is raise Bennett's level, just ascend him as high as possible, and give him the highest ranking weapon that you can, a 5-star weapon that is leveled up as high as possible just to increase that base attack. Artifacts like feathers or just flat attacks or even attack percentages will not affect this whatsoever. Just kind of remember that. Even weapons that have attack percent as their secondary stat won't actually affect it. It only will take into account those base stats from the weapon and from the character. And it also imbues the character within the AoE with pyro. So you can actually kind of use this to cleanse certain things, which is always good. I mean, cleansing things in higher level content is kind of important. So you can remove those stupid elemental debuffs like when you're affected by cryo and all that good stuff. You can kind of get rid of that stuff there, which is always nice. Here we can kind of see how that breaks down. So when you activate it, it's going to do some damage. Your continuous regeneration per second on the HP, 8.4% of your max HP plus a flat 914 at level 6. So that's actually kind of cool. Your attack bonus ratio is 78% of that, what was mine, like 500 and something, so you'll get an extra 78% of that 500 number. And then you can see duration and cooldown, and energy cost is only at 60, so that's pretty cheap for an ulti. And one of the cool things that you're going to do with Bennett is basically stack energy recharge so that you can get this off constantly, because this ult in general is like insanely stacked. Like just it heals, and then once you hit that threshold for the heals, it just gives you extra attack. Like what? Next we have Rekindle, which decreases Passion Overload's cooldown by 20%, so basically lets you fire off your elemental skill a little bit more often. Then we have Fear Not, which within the area created by Fantastic Voyage, Passion Overload takes on the following effects. Its cooldown is reduced by 50%, and Bennett will not be launched by the effects of Charge Level 2. So when we are inside of the AoE field of Inspiration field, Passion Overload has its cooldown, which is already, you can see whichever one you do, just pressing it, level 1, level 2, it reduces this by 50%, which is insane to begin with. And then if you hold it up to level 2, where you would normally be, charged in and then, launched backwards, that's going to take up precious time, and it's going to lower overall DPS because you're not able to do anything until you hit the ground, and then you can, start moving again. You're not actually knocked back if you do that, and it reduces it from that 10 seconds down to the 5 seconds as well. So it's just kind of extra icing on that cake. And last but not least, we do have our throwaway talent, which is when dispatched on an expedition. And Mondstadt, time consumed, is reduced by 25%. Basically, Bennett's always going to be doing some expeditions. Now, checking out some Constellations. At level 1, Fantastic Voyage's attack increase no longer has an HP restriction and gains an additional 20% of Bennett's base attack. So this is mind-blowing how stacked they made Bennett. Like there's that whole thing where Barba was originally a 5-star character, but they made her a 4-star. I think Bennett should have been a 5-star character, and they were just like, I will just make him a 4-star. We'll give him something. Like it makes no sense how freaking good Bennett is. But anyways, so basically your elemental burst, the attack increase no longer has an HP restriction, so you're always going to get that attack buff. You don't have to be above the 70%, and it also gains an additional 20% of his base attack as well. So it's literally just stacking extra attack. It's too good. It's too good. Level 2, when Bennett's HP falls below 70%, his energy recharge is increased by 30%. So he already has a little bit of energy recharge worked in, which is perfectly great. Next, we have at level 3, it's going to increase Passion Overload by 3. Cool. At level 4, using a normal attack when executing the second attack of Passion Overload's charge, level 1 allows an additional attack to be performed. Oh. So essentially what this is going to do is it allows you to do an extra attack basically as you're charging up for your level 2. So essentially once you hit level 1, you can do an extra attack, and it basically just does extra damage on top. Obviously I don't have C4. From what I've researched, it's literally just an extra hit of extra damage. At level 5, it's going to increase the level of Fantastic Voyage by 3, which is fine. And then level 6. So this one's kind of a controversial Constellation level, sword, claymore, and pole arm wielding characters inside of Fantastic Voyage's radius gain a 15% pyro damage bonus, and their weapons are infused with pyro. So if you do not know what this means, do not activate it, even if you have C6. Now, obviously, I don't have C6. I haven't messed around with this personally, like on hands experience. Essentially, everyone says don't mess with this constellation level unless you know what you're doing. From what I've gathered, essentially what's happening here is by infusing sword, claymore, and pole arm characters attacks into pyro, you're losing the ability to pair Bennett with characters that don't want things turned to pyro. This is going to override some characters completely, and that's bad. If you have certain characters set up to do certain damages, you want to keep that. If you have certain characters that excel at doing a specific element of damage and you change it to pyro, obviously they're not going to do very good. If someone out there has C6 Bennett and can explain, elaborate a little bit more, I would highly appreciate that down in the comments, not only for my knowledge, but for everyone else's knowledge as well. Now, as we stated, there are a couple of different ways to build Bennett, whether you want to do DPS or support. I think most people are going to go with the support builds, and I think that's probably the safest bet to start out with. We will get into the DPS stuff shortly after this, so let's just go ahead and knock out some weapons here. Okay, I'm actually re-recording this section just because I kind of found a better way to explain this. Essentially, you're going to be able to use the same set of weapons for both DPS and for a support in general. There are a couple that make more sense so for one versus the other, but in general, most of these weapons can work for both sides. The reason is because if you are going for a pure support build and you only want to build up the HP stat, then you can do that. You don't really care about your weapon. But if you do care about the attack buff, then you want to raise your base attack as much as possible. So it does make sense to have a really decent 5-star weapon on there, just simply because it's raising your base stats. Even though you're not going to be using him as a DPS, it makes more sense. So what I did is on the typical image that I show here, I've put like a sliding scale on the left. At the top, we have all of our support weapons, which is what I go over first. And then we have our DPS weapons on the bottom. So for support weapons, I would mainly prioritize things that have energy recharge in the best case scenario. So best case scenario, as a all-out support character, you know, Skyward Blade makes the most sense, but it also makes sense to have Summit Shaper and Aquila Favonia on here as well. Even though they don't have energy recharge on them, the high base stat helps increase the attack increase from your burst. So it makes some sense to go with those if you already have them and you have them leveled up. And then we have like Festering Desire, Favonia Sword, Sacrificial Sword, Skyrider Sword. All these make terrific sense as a support-focused Bennett, if that's what you're going for. But if you do want high-level attack and you don't have Skyward Blade, then maybe you go with Summit Shaper or Aquila Favonia, simply because they're going to benefit the attack increase from your burst more than, you know, Skyrider Sword, just because it has energy recharge. Get that energy recharge out of your artifacts instead. Now, when it comes to artifacts, this is also going to be kind of cut and dry. Noblesse, hands down, makes the most sense. Until you can farm out a full set of Noblesse. You could also go with some energy recharge stuff here. Things like the Scholar and Exile will work perfect. Even if you do a two-piece set of both, you'll have an extra 40% energy recharge. Now, outside of that, you can start mixing and matching, like, you know, until you get your full 4-piece of Noblesse. Maybe you want to go with a 2-piece Scholar, 2-piece Exile, and a 2-piece of the Noblesse, you know, kind of mix and match whichever ones you have, just so you at least get some energy recharge and some burst damage increase as well. Some more interesting things that you could do, you could go with some energy recharge, so like Exile or Scholar, and you could actually throw on Maiden Beloved. I know a lot of people are going to be like, why in the world would I do that? Just if you needed more heals. If Bennett is the only healer that you have and you need him to excel at it, then that's what you got to do until you can move into another healer or something like that. It's at least an option. And then outside of that, if you want to be even more obscure, you could go with a full 4-piece of the instructor set. So increases elemental mastery by 80, and upon triggering an elemental reaction, increases all party members' elemental mastery by 120. So depends on your playstyle, how you want to build Bennett. Those are just some options. Now, no matter which set you end up going with, just make sure that we are prioritizing energy recharge as much as possible. Even if you have to dedicate an entire Sans piece to it, it's worth it, all right? Something else to consider is healing bonus. Sticking one of these on your circlet is going to just enable so much better heals, and it's just going to dig you out of holes that you may find yourself in, especially in some of the later abyss floors and stuff like that. Another thing to also consider is giving yourself a really solid flower, or possibly even trying to throw on some HP focused pieces. I know. Why would I waste one of those? It's not optimal for sure, but especially in the early game, HP is a lot easier to come by. So you could consider doing that until you at least get a little bit further down the road and have some decent substats in turn, instead of having a main stat as HP. Otherwise, definitely consider elemental mastery as a piece. If you don't have anything else to choose, elemental mastery is going to do you well here. Now, when it comes to leveling up talents, first and foremost, as a support, you're going to be using this burst as often as possible. Please, please, please make this top priority. It will not make any sense for you to do anything else. After that, your elemental skill makes the most sense, because as a support, you're very rarely going to be using your normal attack, so don't try to waste any materials on that until you at least max out your other two, depending on whatever level you plan to get Bennett to or whatever. And then last but not least, you could throw some talent materials at your normal attack if you do end up seeing yourself moving into more of a DPS at a later date or something like that. That's what I personally feel like I would do, so that I just went ahead and, leveled everything up. Now for DPS, we're going to reference the same image that we talked about earlier, and all of these weapons still make sense as a DPS, because as a DPS, we still care about energy recharge. We still care about high attack stats. We still care about that stuff. It's just like, this is more of like a sliding scale on, what you have, and like how good you kind of want to build certain things, whether you want more healing or more damage or more, attack increase for your main carrier, whatever you're doing. But essentially, as a DPS, Summit Shaper and Aquila Favonia make the most sense, but Skyward Blade also makes a lot of sense here. You kind of see what I'm saying? Black Sword is really huge. Iron Sting, free to play, really, really good. The Flute, Lion's Roar, all also make sense, and Prototype Rancor, also free to play friendly. Fillet Blade and Harbinger of Dawn also make tons of sense here. There's literally a ton of different options. There's literally a ton of options that go towards building Bennett. Just make sure that your ultimate goal is to have enough energy recharge to be able to fire your burst off cooldown, and to have as high of a base attack as possible, which will require you to have 4 or 5-star weapons in the mix, but you can use 3 stars until you get there. And then focus on having your artifacts set up to replace what your weapon isn't giving you, whether it's crit rate, crit damage, whether it's energy recharge, whether it's elemental mastery, whatever you're going for, you can kind of focus on that in your artifacts at that point. Even if we go back to our constellations at C1, this is where, like, I really do feel like DPS potential starts to open up even wider, and just being that hybrid support makes a lot more sense. If you don't have C1, you could still run him as a perfectly fine DPS. But at C1, he definitely makes a lot more sense to start considering a DPS at least. So the HP restriction on the attack is amazing to be removed. The main bread and butter is being able to heal the team and provide that attack buff. Even if it's to himself, he needs to be able to do that. So if you are short on energy recharge, definitely consider giving yourself a weapon, or, tailoring your artifacts to include an entire energy recharge piece. Now, when it comes to artifacts as a DPS, you're going to be doing a lot of pyro damage, man, and Crimson Witch of Flames makes tons of sense, especially if you are running melt comp, this makes so much more sense. Just extra pyro damage and using your elemental skill literally just increases your 2-piece set bonus by 50% up to 3 stacks. Or if you haven't farmed out enough of the Crimson Witch Flames, because I know they are kind of a pain to farm, you could go with a full 4-piece of the Gladiator's Finale. It does work. It will hold you over. It's also not very like farm friendly, unfortunately. Bennett DPS really doesn't have a whole lot of farm friendly stuff, but 4-piece of the Gladiators will work, or you could mix and match those two between 2 Glad and 2 Crimson Witch. They will also work, and you could also kind of consider throwing in like a 2-piece of Noblesse in there if you really wanted to, just to kind of fill the gap on whichever one you are short. If you have 2 pieces of Glad, 2 pieces of Noblesse, you could throw that on there. If you have 2 pieces of Noblesse, 2 pieces of Crimson Witch, you could throw that on there, kind of however you want to do that. No matter what you end up doing, make sure that you focus on pyro damage first. All right, do as much pyro damage in your artifacts as possible. Get a goblet at the bare minimum for pyro damage. Then after that, you can work on your crit rate, crit damage, kind of, you know, make sure that they fit into that 1-to-2 ratio. Highly consider running an elemental mastery on your sands piece if you can. If not, you could go with attack. It's okay. But also the sands is going to kind of, you know, depend on kind of what you have, because there's a lot of different things that can kind of work into this. Elemental mastery on the sands makes sense. Energy recharge on the sands makes sense. Those two I would probably factor in more than attack, but attack is also something you could put on there. And, you know, at worst, you could go for something like HP, just to simply give yourself extra heals, you know, because max HP is kind of where you get your healing from. Now, as a DPS, leveling up these talents is going to be slightly different than as a support, but because this burst is so freaking amazing, we're not going to let it go to waste. First and foremost, I would actually focus on your elemental skill. You're going to be using this a ton as a DPS. You're also going to be using your normal attack, but it's actually not the most important thing here. Leveling up your elemental skill makes a huge ton of sense. Leveling up your elemental burst definitely makes a ton of sense here. I mean, like we said earlier, this stuff is just too good to pass up. And then kind of focus on your normal attack. Don't forget about it, but I would say like 34% of the time you're going to want to go with this. 33% of the time you're going to want to go with this, and 32% of the time you're going to want to go with this. All right, and that's going to leave you with 99%. And that other 1%, you can just play it by ear. Okay, so we actually just skipped over to daily reset. So let's go do some commissions, and I've got this team set up that I was kind of messing around with earlier so that we can kind of check out. Oh, it's interesting. It's raining. Got some stuff that we can check out. Keep in mind, level 60, all level 6s thanks to Child. Actually, I'm going to switch something. So here is my measly little setup that I have. Basically, Black Sword level 70. Like I said, it's one of the only like higher ones that I have. I do have Rancor, but I wasn't going for like a physical damage kind of thing. I was definitely wanting extra crit rate because my crit rate at 54.69. I do have some artifacts that would allow me to do some pretty nutty crit damage, but it didn't really work out with the melt comp, and that's kind of like the main thing that I wanted Bennett for. So anyways, 147 on energy recharge. Could be better, honestly, but that's just kind of what I've got. Rocking 53.7% on the pyro damage bonus, and only 28 elemental mastery. Not amazing by any means. The reason is because this is my Diluc set that I've been working on. What we're going to be doing is we're going to kind of be focusing on getting Chongyun and using his elemental skill to kind of imbue everything with cryo, and then we're going to be focusing on using Bennett to do a bunch of pyro damage. So, okay, nice. Let's go for the big boy first. Let's just go ahead and take this guy on. So we're gonna go ahead and pop this. Gonna go ahead and pop this, and as you can see, just gonna do as much melt damage as possible. You can see because we're in Chongyun's little area of effect there, we're able to just constantly melt. Now my Bennett is, you know, like I said, I just got him. I actually just started farming Crimson, so it's pretty nutty that even like with what little time I've had Bennett, he still is able to surprise with as much damage as he has. So one of the things that C6 Bennett, like we were talking about, would give us some issues if we end up trying to do this particular setup where we have Chongyun and we try to do, you know, a melt situation. It ends up ruining that. For whatever reason, it just completely overrides it to not such a good effect. So that's why you kind of have to be careful. If you don't know exactly what you're getting into, you kind of got to be careful with that. See, this is popping off every 2.5 seconds, which is pretty insane. So yeah, that's pretty cool. The other piece here. Now, I could switch it out for the crit damage on this, but the thing is, if I do that, it makes this so far out that it's really, really wonky. But I just want to see if I can get a decent number. So I'm pretty sure beforehand we were doing roughly like 4,000 on the crit. It's 4,300. Yeah, 5,400. Okay. So yeah, 5,498, almost 5,500. Oh, that was a nice, that was 15. And there you see the little charge got me almost to 9,000 on the crit. That's pretty gnarly. So let's go ahead and charge this up. Yeah, you kind of see he blocked it all, but that's kind of how it looks. All right, we're gonna do a charge on our elemental skill. All right, and we're gonna charge. So that's level 1, that's level 2, and then he just kind of does that. Pretty nice. Level 1, and you can see it just does 2 quick strikes there. Rip Chongyun. All right, let's see if we can get our ult. Okay, and then we can kind of get an idea of how the heals work. You can see, boom, 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 healing really fast on Chongyun there, even though we died again. And that's pretty much Bennett, guys. I mean, I honestly feel like he's one of those characters, to me, that feels a lot like Venti in terms of how you build him. I personally built Venti as a support, but at some point, it really feels like Venti just becomes one of those hybrid characters where he's a support and a DPS at the same time. Bennett kind of fits that role as well to me. You can build him as a support, but eventually building him as a DPS it's just going to naturally start to evolve in itself. I think it's one of those, he's one of the best invested characters out there. If you have Bennett and you have not invested in him, stop investing in whatever you're doing and build Bennett. I'm telling you, I've had him for like 2 weeks, if that. Whenever it was that I pulled for Albedo and I got him, whatever date that was. That was December 27th. It's January 4th. It's not even been freaking... how long? It's been 8 days! I've had Bennett 8 days. Alright? And Bennett literally has become a staple. He is that freaking good. But anyways, that is going to be it for your boy Bennett. I will put up another poll. I think the only other one that we have left is Lisa. If you guys choose Lisa, I'm going to be very upset. I literally have Diluc ready to go, powered up. He's ready. He's ready. But if you guys choose freaking Lisa over the other 3 that I have, I'm just going to leave it up to you guys. You guys are going to pick who you want to see anyways. So anyways, poll will be posted right after this. Hope you guys enjoyed the Bennett guide. Like I said, I've only had him for 8 days. If you guys have any tips to help me get better, please post them down below, simply because not only will they help me get better, but people that read those comments will help as well. And remember, knowledge is power. So thank you guys for hanging out. Thanks so much for watching. See you later. Major shout out to Cherry Blue, who is a YouTube member.